It's Wednesday, August 6th, 2944, and you're listening to Comm Chatter. I'm Alderin, and with me, as always, is Colonel Pixley.
Hello.
It's been a little while since our last show. We've been busy. We've not had time in our schedule to do the show, but the show must go on, so here we are.
Indeed.
So what we're going over today, the Synthworld has finished Phase 10. The Aegis Gladius has recently been sold by the UEE as surplus, though stripped of military hardware. Arena Commander public demo updates. Origin prototype plans have been stolen, as well as Strawn M50 sales. There will also be a Pixley rant on blading and Showdown Quickfire.
Haha.
All that and more after the jump. So, Pixley, what have you been up to?
What have I been up to? Well, other than my job, which is kind of the important thing we do. I've tried to take some time to play some Arena Commander, and we'll talk about it in a bit, but it's actually working over Spectrum now, which has made me very happy. Actually do stuff in it. Haven't been doing so well for various reasons, but I've been enjoying myself, and I'm happy that it's actually working now.
Yeah, I've not actually been on it over Spectrum all that much. It's about that I've mostly been doing single, because, I don't know, I'm having a fun time with it, but I just can't bring myself to go play other people on it yet.
Yeah,
That's when I've not really had the time.
Yeah, time is certainly an issue. And,
Yeah, it's more like, get back to the hangar and just get in the cot and go to sleep, get up, go back to work.
Yep. Well, that, and in regards to playing on Spectrum, there are some really talented people out there. Like, I consider myself a decent pilot, and, there are some things in regards to balance I think need to be worked out, but there are people I recognize that are just flat out better than me, which is a little annoying.
That's and the ships we're using have received a bit of a nerf, so kind of have to readjust to that.
Rest in peace, omnipotent Omnisky.
Yeah. In case anyone's wondering, they mainly weakened and slowed the firing rate on the Omni Skies, and they reduced the power plant size of the 300 series.
Sad face.
Although it's speculated, well, some people are saying that might be a bit much. They might bump the power plant back up a little bit, but we don't know for sure yet.
Yeah, it's kind of difficult to keep things both true to how they actually are in real life and keep things competitive and fun. Because, obviously, all other things being equal, in real life, a Hornet should totally be able to take down a 300 series. That's just a fact of life.
Well, that's just when it comes to ship versus ship.
Well, yeah, which,
of course,
that's what Arena Commander's about.
I've seen people in Auroras do pretty crazy stuff.
Well, that one guy last week, that was an exception. And an exception that will not happen again. Fuck that guy. Anyway, let's move on to the news.
So, as you may or may not have heard, the Synthworld has finished Phase 10. But what is Phase 10? We've never heard of it, or any phases for that matter. Yeah. What are your thoughts on this, Pixie?
What are my thoughts on this? Well,
for those who who aren't aware, Phase 10 is supposedly priming the oxygen generators.
Yes. Which, that sounds like a pretty important step, being able to get an atmosphere and stuff ready.
Although, supposedly they've been ready for a long time, and the planet still doesn't have the gravity to hold the atmosphere.
Yes, which is kind of the major thing we're bringing up, because...
Yeah. Otherwise, they'll just kind of float off into space.
Yeah, because, I mean, ordinarily, Synthworld's kind of just, this thing in the background for big wigs to talk about. But what I found interesting, and the reason I had it listed among the news we're going to talk about on the show, is that Parker Terrell's show, The Plain Truth, which, as I've said before and I'll say again, I have plenty of things to say about Parker Terrell. He interviewed an anonymous worker for the Synthworld project who's, saying that, Phase 10 is kind of a load of bullcrap. That, he had never heard of these phases, certainly not, 9 previous ones. And as Alderin had said, the oxygen generators have been ready, and that the planet doesn't have sufficient gravity yet. So, it's speculated currently that this whole Phase 10 thing is trying to convince people hey, Synthworld is a worthwhile project. We should totally still be throwing money at this, because it hasn't exactly been funded all that great lately, as many people are bound to be aware. So, yeah. I mean, personally, I don't really care one way or the other how things are going on Synthworld. It's going to be an ongoing thing for all I care. But the fact that they have to try and pull this stuff, assuming this guy's allegations turn out to be accurate, which I don't see why people would make something like that up, especially with the arguments he makes towards the end of the interview, which, of course, you can find by going to the Plain Truth archives on the comm link. I mean, he still claims that the Synthworld is worthy of doing, so it's not like he's bringing this out to undermine the Synthworld project. It is a little interesting that people would try that.
Well, to be fair, the Synthworld is one of the big projects of humanity we've all grown up with. I mean, it's, while it hasn't really gotten all that far, it has always been sort of a noble goal, I suppose.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure it should be a priority right now. I mean, things aren't looking the best anywhere. There's certainly better places for the funds. It would be nice to see it finished at some point.
Yeah.
Properly, at least.
Well, yeah, obviously, I don't think we want to rush an entire planet. If we're going to build a planet, we should probably, make sure it's correct and everything. Because imagine the headlines if, suddenly, Synthworld's been settled, and then someone, constructs a building on a wrong part of the plan. The whole thing just cracks in half, killing untold billions of people.
Yeah.
Although in kind of a macabre way, that would be a little funny. Hypothetically. I mean, it's obviously be terrible, because people would die, but, oops!
Yeah,
it's
maybe
kind of funny in that way.
Yeah, it'd be like, maybe we shouldn't build planets. But, yeah. Like I said, it would be nice to see it completed, but, they need the funding for that, and I'm not sure it's there with the government. Even if they wanted to.
Well, I mean, with the economy the way it is, and, all the, flexing and stuff they're trying to do, especially the, tensions that were generated with the Xi'an last year. That's certainly not helping us.
Well, it would be interesting to see if there were funds from private organizations that went to that as well. I mean, I'm sure they could get some sort of benefit on the planets, but that's not our business there.
Yeah, well, I mean, it seems like it'd be a pretty reasonable thing to try to do. I mean, after all, the Stanton system is a system where the government just sold big corporations entire planets. Yeah. So, I think getting one or two big sponsors, I mean, I'm not going to name specific corporations like, hey, these guys should totally have a planet, but I think maybe it's just because at this point it's probably still seen as a bit of a risk, and it's still a long ways off that maybe corporations would not be as wouldn't, how do I word this? They wouldn't feel as secure in their investment, perhaps. Which is, that's something to consider.
Yeah, it's not really, I wouldn't say it's insecure. I mean, it's going to get, there's definite roadmap to finishing it.
Well,
there's enough there, but it's not like it's just going to disappear or something.
Now that would be really interesting if just Synthworld's gone. Okay, this is dark humor things gotta
FanDuel ate it.
FanDuel ate it.
Should we move on?
I do believe we should move on. I think we've talked this one to death.
Oh yeah. So, do you want to take this one?
Sure, why not? Alrighty. So, a few weeks ago, the UAE made a significant number of old Aegis Gladiuses available to the general public with the more sensitive military hardware taken out, and obviously stuff that works put in its place if it's stuff that needs replacing. But yeah, and it ended up selling really well. There aren't any available anymore, at least for the time being. Who knows, maybe they may dig up some more craft as they continue to round out their arsenal with replacement type ships. But it certainly seems to have made the UE quite a decent amount of money. A lot of pilots were really excited to get their hands on them. I would imagine a lot of ex-Navy were probably really excited to fly their old ships again. I mean, obviously, probably not their specific ones, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, the Gladius is a really nice ship to fly. I flew one for some time when I was in the Navy. It's not quite as heavily armed as the Hornets. It's quite light, actually. But it maneuvers really well, which was fantastic when you're in an asteroid field. Like, one of the problems I have with my 325A is it's heavy. If you're hauling butt through an asteroid field and you need to make a quick turn, you're gonna keep going a little while because of the inertia. You might just smack into an asteroid. The Gladius, if you want to turn, you're turning.
Yeah, well, like the Gladius is what, half the mass of the 300 series?
Less than even the base 300i, I think. One thing to watch out for is they don't come with jump drives, although you can equip them in the space where there used to be the military hardware.
Indeed. And also it's worth noting that even with a jump drive, it's not exactly suited for long hauls, because it's like a Hornet, it's just the cockpit you're in. You're not going to be able to, like in a 300 series, go back and pull out the bed or something. You're sitting in that chair.
Also, there's probably very limited fuel, though the Hornet itself does have drop tanks. I'm not sure if they've made it for the Gladius.
I don't know off the top of my head.
I'm sure someone will if they weren't provided by the Navy.
Yep, that's the great thing about the aftermarket.
Yep.
Alrighty.
Anything else on the Gladius?
Nope. I mean, I just think it's cool the UE to do that. They could have let them rot, but instead, they made some money, which they probably need, and people got ships for relatively cheap. I'd say that's a win-win situation.
Yeah, I'd like to see some of these paired with private interest. That'd probably be pretty nice.
Well, anything involving an interest is probably pretty nice.
Yeah.
Someday, my friend. Someday.
We'll get there. You want to take the next one too?
Sure.
You've been following this more than I have.
That is true. I have been following this. So, as someone who's a pretty decent fan of Origin Jumpworks, I mean, obviously, I really like the 300 series, and my 325A is, the ship I blew an overwhelming majority of my remaining money on. I've been following a recent story, actually broke yesterday, about a prototype codenamed Goldfinch had its detailed blueprints and 3D assembly instructions released onto Spectrum. Obviously stolen. Origin, despite being, a decent corporation, all things considered, they like keeping things rather proprietary. So, it's interesting that they publicly released it onto Spectrum as opposed to trying to sell it to one of Origin's competitors, or, something a bit obviously less scrutinized by the law. So, I thought it was interesting. I personally haven't looked at it because it just kind of feels wrong. It's not something I should be seeing.
Nor is there much we could really do with it.
Yeah, I'm not a ship engineer, so it wouldn't help.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting to know what they might have in plan, because, Origin ships are nice.
Yep.
I mean, obviously, we're flying them.
Yeah, and especially with the recent spike in M50 sales.
Yeah, I mean, the M50 sales are kind of what's prompting me to keep what little Origin stock I've got. Because, I mean, sure, it's a little bit of a setback, these being stolen, but yeah, they've got a lot of other stuff that's good going for them. I mean, they've got the 300 series, M50, 890 jump.
Yeah, and those sold pretty well back when those were made available.
Yeah.
It is worth noting that Origin has come out and said that this is a prototype concept thing and not a ship that would have gone to market anytime soon. So it's not like they're necessarily losing sales on this. I mean, obviously it's a setback and people are concerned, especially security-wise, and I imagine Roberts, Space Industries, Anvil, MISC, and the other ship manufacturers are probably making sure their security's up to snuff now, which I guess there's the silver lining on this whole thing is that it should lead to a security increase, make sure these sorts of things can't happen again for any of the ship manufacturers, because they certainly love guarding their trade secrets.
Yeah.
So, thus far, Kaizen hasn't given a firm recommendation to sell. They went with maybe. And it seems like things are holding pretty firm. I mean, obviously there was a little bit of a dip when news broke, but it hasn't severely hurt Origin stock, which obviously is good for Alderin here with his stock.
Yeah, well, I don't see them going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, the strong sales they've been having, well, actually, ship sales overall, I'd say, have been pretty strong, despite the state of the economy, which I'd say that's good. More pilots. Can always use more people like us. So, yeah, and we kind of covered the next topic in the middle of that by saying that, M50's been selling pretty well lately.
Indeed, yeah, it has. It's also, the guns it carries are also a little heavier than I expected a little ship like that would have.
Yeah.
I was thinking they would have the Omni Sky 3s. Is that what they are? The small ones? I don't know. I don't
Yeah,
have
they're the
them on my
threes.
ship.
They're the threes. Yes.
Yeah, or perhaps the M3As, but it actually comes with the M4As.
Yeah. Well, not to mention it's also carrying 4 Talon Stalkers,
Yeah.
which is kind of amazing considering, because, you know, my Origin dealership liked me, so they send me pamphlets and stuff every so often. So, you know, I got some...
That's just marketing.
I know, I just went... That was the joke. Anyway, so, in that pamphlet, they showed a bunch of glory shots of it, which, alright, that is a very beautiful ship. Not quite what I need, obviously, and certainly out of my price range, but it didn't look like there was anywhere to put any missiles.
Oh.
I might just go down to the dealership to go look. Like ask somebody, like, hey, where do the missiles go on this thing? And then they'll probably give me a funny look.
I can't say I'm incredibly fond of the base paint job, though.
I
mean,
remember
it
seeing...
works for it. It's it's sold as sort of a racing ship,
Yeah.
but so it works. But it's certainly not my favorite. I liked one of the gray ones.
Yeah. Well, I remember seeing an early on one that was like mostly white, and that looks pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. Well, I mean, they can't. Origin paint
they're-
jobs can't
they're
all
all
be
gonna-
winners. Oh. Go ahead.
well, if I remember right, they're all going to be released eventually. It's just like I said, this is the base, the sort of general one.
Yeah.
Should we move on?
Oh, I just want to say real quick, like, Origin can't always win with their default paint jobs. I mean, there's, you know, someone's got to balance out the majesty that is the 325 default paint job. Alright, now we can move on.
The next two are going to be almost entirely pixely.
Yeah. Probably shouldn't have talked as much during the news bit to balance it out, but... Alright. So, first topic is based upon a op-ed that was on the Arimis Post entitled "Stop Blading," and it's this mother arguing, making some arguments regarding the practice of blading, which is generally teenagers and young adults getting in an Aurora or some other cheap ship, totally not suited for combat, and flying off, getting the attention of some Vanduul, and trying to make it back without dying. And if you make it back, you're super cool, and everybody respects you for how badass you are. Or, you know, the more likely outcome, you get blown to smithereens and eaten by Vanduul babies afterwards. So, obviously this is a very stupid thing to do. And I heavily argue against going out and doing so. But, there are some cultural things that this mother blames for blading becoming as prevalent as it is on border worlds. And that being vids and Arena Commander. You know, I mean, we've all seen the vids of like the glory of the UE Navy and you know, their triumphs against Vanduul, against all odds. Like, you know, real big damn heroes going on there. And I think she's insulting everyone's intelligence when she claims that people see that as a remotely realistic depiction of how combat against Vanduul goes. I mean, obviously, a lot of them are based on real events, but they're dramatized. They're not completely accurate And even when people do survive against Vandal, and I can say this from experience, and this is really for any combat scenario, you don't always come out okay. Maybe you come out physically fine, but as the old saying goes, war is hell. Okay? People don't come out quite alright. That's why, you know, even in today's day and age, post-traumatic stress disorder is still a real problem with ex-military and even active duty people. It's stressful, it's horrifying, you have people die all the time, you lose your friends, your comrades, people you're close to. But I do think it's insulting people's intelligence to assume that they think that that is completely accurate. I mean, it's obviously not. So, in addition to that, she's also chosen to blame Arena Commander, and while Arena Commander is a decent simulation of fighting against Vandal, obviously imperfect because it's game designers and they want to make it fun, and they're not people who have necessarily faced Vandal. Although if they have, then good on them for making it out and doing something with their lives afterwards. Again, I consider it insulting to people's intelligence that they would think a situation where you're loaded with a pretty optimal loadout at this point. Obviously, things will be more customizable once the full game launches. But, at least in the public demo, you're loaded out with a pretty optimal build for your ship. I mean, obviously you don't have, like, the tweaks, but, you know, it's a decent default loadout. And, relatively close to more advanced base models, like, especially the Hornet, because you get the ball turret with that. Even if you're, you know, even if the ship you're running it on is the base model civilian Hornet that lacks the ball turret, you still get that. And then your Orta comes pretty well equipped. Well, I would argue that the 300i was also well equipped before they nerfed the Omni Sky, but I mean, those still do pretty good damage to sides in Arena Commander. Anyway, my point is, it's difficult. Vandal Swarm is difficult. It's not something you're gonna get all the way through your first try. Sure, the first several waves are pretty simple. You can handle them. The thing is, you're optimally loaded. No, not optimally. You're decently loaded. You're coming with you have a fresh ship every time. And you get 3 lives. And then there's no penalty for losing. The most important thing is you get 3 lives. And with those, on your first try, maybe you'll get to wave 6 or 7. So, 3 lives. You only get 1 life in real life. I mean, sure, you may, you know, you get blasted out if the Vandal decide they can't be asked to go pick up your body and do whatever it is Vandal do with prisoners. You know, maybe you're lucky and get picked up. Like, someone gets your black box distress call, or however that whole thing works. Someone might pick you up, take you back, get you patched up. You know, if you take damage. Obviously, modern medical science will help you out there. But, you know, I would say, especially in the case of these kids who go blading, that's their 1 life. They are not going to get picked up. They're too far out in very dangerous space. If they do make it out alive, they will be severely injured. And they're not optimally loaded ships. They're in their mom's Aurora, probably. you know, a ship used primarily for getting from point A to point B within UE space, not a ship designed to take on the most vicious sons of bitches we've ever seen. It just irritates me when people blame Arena Commander on things that it has no reason to be blamed on. And obviously, blading is not necessarily a new phenomenon. I mean, Arena Commander, the Arena Commander public demo only launched a few months ago. It has not been that long. And I would assume if blading's got to the point where it's reached, you know, empire-wide news status, that it's been going on for longer than a few months. That's actually become a problem, like a long-term problem in these border worlds. So, I think it's unfair to blame Arena Commander, especially in that regard. Vids, maybe, but Arena Commander, I don't think deserves any of the blame she's giving. I mean, not to say that her overall point isn't wrong. Blading's fucking stupid, and I have no sympathy for people who try to go after that. No sympathy whatsoever.
Yeah, simply put, people have been blaming this sort of stuff for longer than we've known about the Vanduul, or any other races for that matter.
Indeed. Alright. I've ranted out on blading. I'll move on now.
Yeah. In a nutshell, don't do it, and if you do have to risk an encounter with Vanduul, hire professionals.
Incidentally, pick and shield services are available for fighting Vanduul at the lowest possible cost. Thank you.
Right.
I would like to reiterate that we do not use this show as an advertising platform. That was meant as a joke. Kind of. Sort of. Anyway, I'm gonna move on now. So, next thing I'm gonna rant about, which this one's gonna be significantly shorter, is Showdown Quickfire. The Showdown itself, I would say, is a pretty decent debate show. I mean, I don't go out of my way to watch it, but it does make for a good reference when getting stories to talk about on this show. But they've started this segment called Quickfire, where they just like rapidly do like one back and forth debate over a small topic and then move on, with very little context, and, you know, not really enough for people who don't follow every single bit of news to be able to keep up with. Like, there are some topics that were on the most recent Quickfire. There's a couple, like a week or two ago. Like, there are some topics that seemed like things I would really like to cover, but I don't know enough about them. I don't have time to go searching for them. And it would have been nice if they'd given a little bit of context so that we can, you know, have some sort of information to be able to talk about it, as opposed to like, well, that sure is a thing. Like, that's, you know, this show's about, you know, deep discussion and talking about people's lives, that sort of thing. It's like quick back and forths is not conducive to that. And sure, it may be selfish of me to like, oh, your specific show format is not necessarily conducive to my little podcast that I do every once in a while. But it's presented too quickly, and I think that's something that a lot of people who don't necessarily have the time to follow the news all the time can agree with. I would hope. That's all I've got. Again, not too much on it. I just want to make my feelings known on that one. We'd like to take this time to thank everyone who's made this show possible. Ship manufacturers, pick and shield clients, friends of the show, the one guest we've had thus far, all the wingmen out there. Definitely like to give a shout out to those. And Senate Van Ryn for inspiring us. Wherever he is, I hope he's doing okay. If you would like to appear on Comm Chatter, you can email us at pickandshield@gmail.com. You know, tell us a bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, and we'll consider you having you on. I like to think that the show we did with Savalent Grimm, despite him being a filthy-ass pirate, there's no hyphen. There's the hyphen between filthy ass, not ass and pirate, for the record. That would change the meaning completely. And anyway, I like to think that was one of our better shows because of the different perspective we had on the show that day. Even, you know, with our little spat over dump and jump. I like to think that was good content, and I'd like more of that.
Yeah, the fact of the matter is, if you apply to be on the show, you probably will be.
Yeah, it's not like we have a queue or anything right now. So, and if you have something you want to contribute, something to suggest, you can also shoot us an email with your idea. We're open to suggestions and, you know, even constructive criticism. I mean, obviously, if you're just gonna insult us, I don't want you sending things to the email, because that's not something I want in my email. Anyway, especially since I use that email address for business too. But yeah. So if you want to guest or contribute, shoot us an email, pickandshield@gmail.com. So yeah, this is Colonel Pixley and Alderin Grand signing off.
Have a good day, everyone.